It is 4 o'clock, and this workshop session of the Kerrville City Council is now in session. Do we have any public comments?
Yes, sir, no one signed up.
All right. Then let's move to the information discussion about Hill Country Solar Eclipse.
Mayor and Council, we've got Ms. Ashley Boyle here and the Chiefs to present further information on two exciting upcoming events in 2023 and 2024. We are right at the epicenter of a couple of eclipses that are going to be happening here. So Ashley will further brief you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoppy. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. Thank you for your time this afternoon. As Mr. Hoppy mentioned, we have two huge events that will be occurring in about the next 20 and 26 months. Two major solar eclipses. The first will occur on October 14th, 2023. This will be an annular solar eclipse, and the second will occur on April 8th, 2024, and this is a total solar eclipse. And I'm going to give you a very high-level definition of those in a minute. I'm not an astronomer, so this is about the area of my expertise in this area, so please don't ask me specific questions on eclipses.
We're all learning.
We're all learning. Yes. So I wanted to give you kind of a graphical representation of what's the difference between both. So an annular solar eclipse occurs when the moon covers the sun's center, leaving the sun's visible outer edges to form a ring of fire or annulus around the moon. And annular means ring-shaped. It occurs every 1 to 2 years, and its visibility depends on your location and where you are, whether or not you can view it or not. Versus the total solar eclipse, and this is when the moon completely hides the solar surface or photosphere and thereby cuts off all direct rays of sunlight for the observer. The moon is between the Earth and the sun, and there are about 2 to 5 total solar eclipses each year, with one taking place every 18 months or so. Similar to the annular eclipse, whether or not you can see it depends on your location and proximity. So that's the difference between the two. One is a ring of fire, essentially, and one is a total eclipse where it covers it. So the second one is a total darkness. So what does that mean for us? Kerrville is in the direct path and prime viewing location for both eclipses. Kerrville is even identified as one of the top best locations to globally view the 2024 eclipse. Other best locations near us are Utopia, Lakey, Fort Worth, Paris, Uvalde, Fredericksburg, Spring Branch, Marble Falls, and Waco. Cities like Austin are also in the path, but they're not in the direct path like us. They'll be getting about 1 minute and 40 seconds worth of total darkness. We will be getting about 4.5 minutes. So wow. We're really in the prime viewing area for the total eclipse. And as you can see, those are graphs and maps that show the pathways of both eclipses. The left is the 2023 eclipse, and then the right is the 2024 eclipse. Okay, so potential impact. Both events are significant, more so the 2024 event. It's a big deal. We're anticipating a potential influx of 150,000 people, give or take. So an event of this magnitude requires careful emergency management planning in order to anticipate and mitigate foreseeable problems and issues for safety. Additionally, as this will likely bring a significant tourism impact to our community, logistics and event planning need to occur concurrently to manage the influx and to provide a safe and positive experience for our community and guests. This sort of influx brings a set of unique challenges that must be addressed and planned for. And there will be a potential significant boost to our local economy. With the influx of people are going to be staying in hotels, are going to be spending money, hotel motel tax, sales tax, things like that. And then we will need to activate our emergency operations center and plan for resources accordingly and budget accordingly for that. The planning committee, so because of this, staff recommends establishing a planning committee for oversight for our community. The chairs will consist of myself, Chief Maloney, Chief McCall, and Julie Davis from the CVB. And then we'll also be working with stakeholders within the community that are interested and need to be included in the planning process as well. And then we can appoint additional members up to 11 total. And this is also on your regular meeting scheduled tonight under the consent agenda to adopt the resolution establishing this committee. Okay, Our goals, we will be tasked with planning to consider issues and report findings, conclusions, and proposals in advisory capacity to the City Council, and will be the convening body of a larger local planning group. We want to ensure public health and safety, that's first and foremost, identify needed resources, mitigate major issues and impacts on our community, plan for emergency management, plan for event tourism components, and provide a welcoming and enjoyable experience for our community and visitors. So those are our goals. And then, as a reminder, this planning effort is consistent with Kerrville 2050 in a variety of capacities. The one identified here is for under the Parks chapter, and it calls for providing for and enhancing park programming for public gatherings and events, and these eclipses provide the opportunity for this exact purpose. Okay, so key considerations, there will be a lot, but these are some of the highlights that I wanted to share with you today. The committee will consider the following, but not limited to: traffic control, crowd control, emergency response, staging areas, emergency communication, resource distribution, potential health communication, sufficiency of healthcare services, communication plans, public information regarding traffic delays, road closures, congestion, things like that, events and education, lodging, where are we going to lodge all these people? Do we have enough lodging? Events and activities for pre and post eclipses, and opportunities for, again, subcommittee and stakeholder input as well in the planning process. And I will turn it over to Chief Maloney to cover the emergency.
Actually, before you do, how did you and Julie Davis get this event here?
Yeah, lots of hard work and
Put in a request.
stars aligning. No pun intended.
All right, in regards to the emergency management, so during the event itself and definitely leading up, so there'll be a full activation of the Emergency Operations Center. Chief McCall and myself, so we'll operate as incident commanders, similar to what y'all have seen before during the winter storms. The other staff sections will include the emergency management coordinator, so we'll have planning, logistics, finance, and operations. Some key priority areas we'll be monitoring will be ensuring public health and safety, public information related to public safety updates, ensuring citizen and business security, maintaining public order and crowd control, maintaining capacity to respond to police, fire, and EMS incidents, and then traffic control. Okay.
Thank you, Chief. And then we will also be establishing our plan for events. We visited with other cities that have had this sort of kind of a magnitude, and one key thing that we were told was, there's lots of congestion. People arrive just to see it and then they leave, and so there's lots of congestion on the highways and in the community. So we're trying to be proactive, or will try to be proactive, and get people here hopefully in advance of the eclipse, do some activity planning, have obviously the major event, and then hopefully keep people post-event too for some events going on to kind of stagger hopefully when people arrive and leave. So that's what that committee will also be considering. Key priority areas will be evaluating public-private partnership. There's firms and vendors out there that do events like this. Do we want to work with them and engage them and put them under contract, or do we want to try to handle it ourselves? Concerts, family-friendly activities, recreational opportunities, considering open up the parks, camping in some parks that are not allowed camping in, vendors, relevant special interest groups, merchandise, marketing, tourism, and all the logistics that go along with event planning. And that concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions you might have.
This is pretty exciting. I think we ought to have a total eclipse of the sun festival.
We're working on that.
I'm thinking of some musical songs that would go.
Right. Uh-huh.
Little
That's
country, little
right.
rock and roll, 4 years ago, my hometown in Nebraska, little town of 150, and the eclipse went right over it. But you could not believe the people that came from all over the United States. And there were a few, and I mean, this is an itty bitty town. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have hotels. I mean, they stayed in larger cities around, but they come all over and love it. So
They do.
it'll be exciting.
It's very much a big deal, and we're expecting like I said, a big influx to Kerrville, and it's gonna be great for our community. We just need to make sure we're planned and ready for it.
Yeah.
Because of our strategic location on I-10, we really are the first city for all of the western United States
Yep.
True.
on a major interstate highway.
Yeah.
And so we anticipate a lot of folks.
Wow. Oh.
Did you say 150 people in your town?
I did.
Hey, I'd just like to say that what you've already done in planning is exceptional. Really looks good. I know a lot of work to be done yet, but you're off to a great start.
Thank you. I think we have a great team on board.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Because the creation of the ad hoc committee is on the consent agenda, we won't have this presentation at a regular meeting, right?
That is correct.
Okay. I thought it would have been good to have this presentation for the public. I thought they would have probably really enjoyed it as council did, but I'm really excited for it too, and looking forward to it. Thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
All right, good. Okay. Guidelines for hill country dark skies and tree preservation.
Mr. Drew Paxton, further brief council on one of these Kerrville 2050 action items.
Thank you, Mr. Hoppy. The dark sky guidelines are not only for the total eclipse, but more for development up to that point and continuing beyond that point.
Here are the guidelines.
For the dark sky guidelines, that we are looking at one of the park's implementation items to evaluate the desirability of a night sky ordinance, tree preservation from our character and community placemaking, consider a tree preservation ordinance. The Code Review Committee did look at drafts of these, very early drafts of these, about 2.5 years ago. At that time, they actually decided not to take any action on those and go into any depth of review, and then shifted their focus to some of the bigger rocks that we were working on, the subdivision ordinance and the zoning code. Now that we've gotten those completed, wanted to come back and at least touch base on those. As you can see, we are recommending these from the committee's discussion early on, recommending these as guidelines rather than an ordinance. Again, the Code Review Committee kind of vetted it to that level before they passed on. Some of the goals for all of them are to create some consistent and community adopted guidelines. Again, these would not be requirements for development, but just to have a set of guidelines that we can pass out to developers and so on. Provide a document and reference in partnerships and other incentive agreements. As you know, when we do some of those different development agreements, there are other pieces that come along with that, and this would provide a consistent document that we could incorporate into that agreement. And assist in educating the community on accepted and recommended practices, both for dark skies and tree preservation. Goals of dark skies, obviously protecting the night sky and the reduction of glare and night trespass. I know you guys have seen the KPUB changed their light standard years ago to actually dark sky compliant street light. So there's very little light trespass outward from the light. It's all down lighting and the smaller lens that tucks up underneath the light. That's kind of one example of what those dark sky standards are. Again, protecting the night sky. This is actually a video or a picture from the blackout in Northeast. So you can see what was existing before and what happened during that blackout. Just the difference that it made in just the sky having that entire area completely blacked out. Here's kind of an interesting image, again, focusing on the street light, but you can see some examples of different fixtures that would be interchanged from existing fixtures to dark sky fixtures if someone wanted to. Most of the developers we've talked to thus far have said this is really a zero cost change for them. They're required to put lights in. If they're putting a different style light, it's just picking out the right light from the beginning. Obviously, having something consistent and available, they can make those references early on. But again, you can see those in that top right-hand side. The biggest thing is that the bulb or the light source is always kind of hidden from view. The street light one, you can see that bright band pointing down. That's more like what KPUB has now. They're lighting the actual street and not that glare extending beyond. Here's a light pollution map. Don't remember the year on that one, but as you can see, Kerrville is on the edge of a very dark portion of Texas. Obviously with the hill country being apt for outdoors. Night skies is a big part of that and could be a big part of our tourism. So I kind of see where San Antonio is. Let's see. Mouse is way too jumpy. But you can see Kerrville right there in the center of the screen. Obviously, we do have some light pollution with our environment here, but beyond that, lots to protect there. These are some different international dark sky places around the area. The left side of the screen is South Yana River State Park and Junction. All the way over to Austin, there are a couple communities and parks in the Austin area that have garnered a dark sky place designation. Through the International Dark Sky Association, there are 5 different programs that you can qualify under, being a dark sky community, dark sky park, dark sky reserve, dark sky sanctuary, and urban night sky places. Each of those have different criteria through the International Dark Sky Association. Obviously, should we ever look to go for one of those certifications, there's different opportunities there. Legislation has made some recent changes on how lighting can be regulated, along with other building materials. For a city seeking a certification and going through that ordinance and regulation process, that is allowable under the state legislation if you are International Dark Sky Association certified. But again, that's not the goal now, but there are paths that direction if that's the direction we want to go in the future.
Does anything come with that certification, or just the name that we are a dark sky?
I think more of it's just the international recognition
Okay.
of showing those efforts to protect the night sky. Switching gears to tree preservation. Again, the goals here would be to encourage and protect the preservation of native and adapted trees within the city. Looking at protection of healthy trees, and also provide guidance for the replacement of trees that are removed during construction and development. Just some quick examples of how that might kind of shape out. Obviously referencing to the recommended plant list for the Kerrville area. Recommended preservation based on tree diameter and type, and recommendations for replacement trees, what type of trees and the amount of trees, and what that replacement schedule could look like as far as those guidelines. And so next steps that we're looking at is to present these guidelines to the Code Review Committee in March, present them to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Since there is some overlap, again, these are guidelines, not regulations, but that way Planning Commission is familiar that those are in place and available, and then bring those back to City Council, hopefully in April, for consideration. And then ongoing, we can use these and some other programs and other partnerships for continued education through the community. Any questions?
Can you back it up just a couple of, keep going. One more. Okay, the International Dark Skies communities versus International Dark Skies parks. Can you give me some of the criteria, maybe the difference in the criteria between, say, the Dark Skies parks and the Dark Sky reserves? I mean,
I've got a short kind of summary of what each of them are. I'll just go through each one of them.
okay,
Communities are legally organized cities and towns that adopt quality outdoor lighting ordinances and undertake efforts to educate residents about the importance of dark skies.
okay,
Parks are public or privately owned spaces protected for natural conservation that implement good outdoor lighting and provide dark sky programs for visitors.
okay,
A dark sky reserve, the reserve consists of a dark core zone surrounded by a populated periphery where policy controls are enacted to protect the darkness of the core. And then dark sky sanctuary are the most remote, often darkest places in the world whose conservation state would be the most fragile because they are
Okay.
so dark. Urban night sky places are sites near or surrounded by large urban environments whose planning and design actively promote authentic nighttime experience in the midst of the artificial light at night, and otherwise do not qualify for designation under the other programs.
thank you.
On the dark sky issue, okay, what about commercial lights? Because I mean, if you drive down Sidney Baker north, just the multiplicity of, and strength of commercial lights.
A lot of that's gonna be just your reduction of glare and the light trespass. We have a lot of newer projects that have actually implemented dark sky lighting on their site anyway. I believe Hobby Lobby has dark sky compliant parking lot standards. HEB does. The Landing has done some. So like I said, the examples that you see here, there's pages of examples that are, kind of give you those direct comparisons to the old floodlight on the wall of a building to more of a downlight that lights the actual parking lot or entryway. Again, the biggest part is shielding. There are actually some different standards for sports complexes, sports stadiums. Obviously, it's a much different lighting scenario, but there are even ways to keep those shielded in the timing and when they're used. Similar to the sports complex implemented some of the early dark sky lighting for sports complexes. That technology changes rapidly, as you can imagine, but as you guys have seen from the interstate, you don't really get a lot of glare from those lights. You can see the fields, but you don't see the direct lights like you would with the older style floodlights. So,
Probably a premature question. Will, once this is in effect, anything that's out there is grandfathered? Yes?
these would not even be regulations. At this point, we're just recommending them as guidelines.
Recommended, okay.
So, and through the development process, our departments get a lot of questions on these types of regulations. So having these adopted and consistent, we can just hand these off and say, these are not requirements, but here's what the community's asked for. Community supports dark skies, take that into account into your design if you'd like. And we actually get a lot of positive response to that with just the statements in the comprehensive plan. Having something drafted and adopted would be, I think, that next step further.
And really good for development agreements as well.
Yeah, right now, we do try to include elements of this nature within our development agreements, but again, we struggle for consistency project to project, and we would rather those be community vetted, and so it's just an easy document for us to reference, rather than having to, rewrite them and litigate them every time.
But in terms of guidelines on tree preservation, if somebody comes in and just clear cuts an area, there's not anything we can do, right?
Correct.
Have you looked at the, I know we don't like to go ordinances on this, have you looked at the San Antonio ordinance in regard to tree preservation?
Not recently. I have looked at it previously, but
It's exemplary, and it's been tested in the courts and everything else. But, I just see one project after another where we just got trees gone.
right.
It can't be replaced, obviously. So, I don't know. I hope guidelines work. It's kind of toothless.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
what would be the next step in doing that? So I guess the guidelines may be something that we start pushing out, and we can get feedback from the developers and the community on like, hey, maybe the community is going, hey, I think maybe you went a little bit too far. Hey, maybe we should push a little bit more on this to actually create an ordinance. Is that the purpose of it, or we just?
A lot of this has been vetted through the code review committee, which has small and larger developers, engineers, community members, and that was the guidance from that committee going out.
Okay. To go with the guideline rather than.
That's to go with the guideline.
Okay.
That was a strong opinion of that committee, and from what I observed, being a member of that committee.
Okay.
Not that committee is supposed to be representative of the community.
Right.
Right.
So that, not to say that should be the final answer, but that's the starting point and why I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, why it's coming as a recommended guideline.
I think the biggest thing is that allows us to then take that next step of community education, to show the importance of what both of the impacts that both of these things have, and get that voluntary compliance at that point.
I'm curious, and do you know, is Fredericksburg just guidelines, or do they have some ordinances in place?
If I'm not mistaken, they were seeking certification. I don't know where they are on that process. So if they were seeking certification as a dark sky community, it would have to be an ordinance.
Then you have to go that step.
Right.
Okay,
But I don't know where they are on that process.
okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the work. Thank you.
Okay. Let me ask you, shall we take a break at this point?
Yes, sir.
Be back at 5.
Yes, sir. Judge Przlowski will be here at 5 o'clock, and we'll have folks filtering in. We anticipate the presentation starting about 5:15 to recognize him. So
Okay,
we've got a little bit of time for a short break.
all right. We are now on break. The City Council workshop is back in session, and we are honoring Judge Przlowski, and his 2 family members are here with him today. Let me read this proclamation. City of Kerrville proclamation, whereas the City of Kerrville is made so much better by the efforts of devoted professionals who are dedicated to improving the quality of life of this community and to protecting individuals, families, and children, and whereas Judge Mark A. Przlowski was appointed as municipal court judge for the City of Kerrville in 1988 and served the city in this position for more than 33 years, all the while exhibiting exemplary performance, dedication, and commitment to the city and the public. And whereas Judge Przlowski presided over the city's municipal court, which has general jurisdiction over Class C misdemeanor cases, code enforcement, and at times juvenile issues. And whereas Judge Przlowski's duties included presiding over criminal trials, enforcing court orders, issuing search warrants and arrest warrants, and providing other duties as a state magistrate at the Kerr County Jail. And whereas during the COVID-19 pandemic, Judge Przlowski drafted new operating procedures and guided the court through recertification, such action required by orders of the Texas Supreme Court due to the public health conditions and use of virtual proceedings. And whereas Judge Przlowski is the past president of the Kerr County Bar Association and has served the community in several other ways, including as the leader of a local Boy Scout tribe, youth orchestras and chorale groups, and youth soccer teams. And whereas the City of Kerrville is grateful to acknowledge Judge Przlowski for his dedication and commitment to the residents of the city, for his strong sense of justice, fairness, and respect for all parties in the courtroom, and as a leading lawyer and educator who has distinguished himself at all levels of legal justice, and as a person committed to the overall welfare, safety, and security for the city, where he has distinguished himself as a legal representative for over 30 years. Now I therefore, Bill Blackburn, Mayor of the City of Kerrville, Texas, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, February 22, 2022, as a day of celebration honoring Judge Mark A. Przlowski and his service to the City of Kerrville, Texas. In Kerrville, Texas, and encourage all citizens to join me in celebrating the service and professionalism of Judge Mark A. Przlowski. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Kerrville to be affixed this 22 day of February 2022. Bill Blackburn, Mayor. And we have, let's see, let's get a few pictures
Sure,
here.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have one more. I'm going to present this to you. City of Kerrville presents to Mark Przlowski, thank you for 33 years of outstanding service and dedication to the City of Kerr, December 2021. All right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All the way around, supportive family, and great to have Stephen with us here today as well. And at this time, we can head back into the lobby. This is not going to be a wild and crazy party. It is cupcakes and water. Nothing stronger.
Mayor, don't forget you've got one more thing.
Oh, wait, yeah. Okay, Stephen, will you take this, and this is yours?
Have to share.
Yeah, sure, okay. All right, let's head that way. Any words from the judge?
Sure, it's been a great privilege and honor to be judge for these years, and I thank all of y'all who I've worked with. Really, it's been it's a great community to live and work, and so some of you guys have been around about as long as I have, I think, close. But to work with all the dedicated staff and professionals that we have, and both in all the departments, and especially the court staff, thank you all for your service. I'm still in law practice, you guys. My youngest child was just accepted at Texas A&M, so I have no intention of retiring. Y'all come see me.
So throw some cases to you.
Yeah,
exactly. All right, good. All right. Yeah, thanks.
Judge, I watched you. I'm trying to apologize for not being here.
no problem.
Did you want to go ahead and adjourn? I watched TV.
We're already done. You're no longer official.